Hey guys, some stupid sketch guy here with another prehistoric figure review. Now today's prehistoric figure review will be on one of the newest Mattel figures to be released this year, the Mattel Primal Attack Sarchosuchus. So without further ado, let's get into the review. So the first thing we'll be reviewing, as always, is the paint job. And the paint job is a part of the figure that is good in some areas, but not so good at others. The main part of the paint job that I simply don't like is the olive green. I don't know if it's just me, but I simply am just not a fan of applying really dark greens like this onto figures. So it always kind of turns me off on a figure when they have this kind of, in my opinion, ugly just shade of green. And there are so many other nice shades of green you could have gone with. However, the paint job is saved by the maroon on the top. The maroon helps give a nice contrast to the olive green, and on its own is a pretty good color. So I gotta at least give Mattel credit where credit is due. The maroon is well applied and helps save the figure from having an ugly paint job. So it kinda balances out the figure, and makes it so it's kinda half and half, with the top half being pretty darn good looking, and the bottom half being significantly worse looking. So for that, I give the paint job a 6 out of 10. Next up is the pose. The pose on this figure is definitely far from the most posable thing that Mattel has ever made, because the action feature makes posability on this figure quite limited due to most of the action features being temporary, but that'll come later. For now, the natural pose we get is very nice, and most definitely very crocodilian, considering that the Sarchosuchus is using its legs to kind of carry its belly off the ground. However, like most crocodilians, can't really carry its tail, so it drags it on the ground, kind of like a lizard or a 1920s dinosaur. I really do like this pose, and I also do like that the jaw is open, kind of making it look like it's either basking in the sun or just getting ready to get its teeth on something. So the natural pose that we get here is very nice, very crocodilian. And because of that, I give the pose an 8 out of 10. Next up is articulation and action features. The articulation on this figure is quite limited. You can lift up the front legs sideways and tilt them a bit as well, and you can move the back legs up and down. It's quite simple, nothing special, kind of boring. However, the action feature is a different story, because the action feature is one of my favorites out of the entire Mattel Jurassic World line, because you can move the tail back and forth, causing the Sarchosuchus' head to shake back and forth, linking the tail and the head. And it's kind of cool, and sometimes you can see a bit of a small, subtle chomp that happens when you do this. So I quite like this feature, like, a lot. However, if there is one problem I have with the action feature, it's the button. Because on some days, the jaw can barely close together, like this. However, the next day, without any interference with the figure, the jaw closes way more strongly, just for no reason at all. So that is a small problem that I have, that the clamping down feature isn't really that powerful, and sometimes just can't even clamp its jaws together. But besides that, the action feature is one of the best I've seen. And because of that, I give the articulation and action feature an 8 out of 10. But lastly, there's detail. And detail is probably the weakest part of this figure, because most of the detail doesn't even look crocodilian. It just looks like a couple of randomly individually sculpted scales. It doesn't really look that good, and it looks mildly cheap. I mean, on some parts of the figure, it looks alright. Like, on the face, it looks okay. A little inconsistent, but the face detail is decent at best. And the leg detail is actually the strongest part of the figure, actually looking like a crocodile's foot and leg. However, I can't say that about the rest of the body. Most of the other body doesn't really look like, the very, almost cartoonish looking scales that most crocodilians have. As well as that, the osteoderms on the top are very poorly made, very much looking like they've been glued on due to the horrific seam lines. It just doesn't look that good, and especially that random tail seam at the very end. Why was that there? That's a horrible look. So, throughout most of the body, the detail is applied pretty badly, in my opinion, and just doesn't really look all that right, although it does have a few good parts as well. But then we have to go inside the mouth to see the mouth detail. And the mouth detail is definitely another strong part of this figure, looking very nice and glossy. Although you could make the argument that it's a bit cartoony looking with how just bright red the tongue and gums are, at least Mattel offered to actually add this to the figure. So I have to give him credit where credit's due. The mouth looks alright and is one of the few good parts of the detail. So, for my final rating, I give the detail a 5 out of 10. So now time for my final opinion. The paint job looks quite ugly on the bottom, however on the top looks quite pretty. The pose on this figure is very natural and very crocodilian. The articulation is quite limited, and the action feature is one of the best Mattel has done, although it does have a small problem. And the detail on this figure is quite cheap and plastic looking, for the most part. So, for my final rating, I give the Mattel Primal Attack Sarchosuchus a 6 3/4 out of 10. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Comment down other figures I should review in the comment section below, and see you guys next time. Bye.